Okay, we're live now.
Thank you. Good afternoon and welcome to this meeting of Glamorgan Spring Bay Council. I declare the meeting open at 2 o'clock.
Sorry, I'll have to pass to somebody. Or get you to wait a moment, please. My apologies. And my apologies to those watching online.
Councillor Churchill.
Glamorgan Spring Bay Council acknowledges the traditional owners of our region and recognises their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present.
Thank you. Agenda item 1.1 is present. We have all councillors are present in the chamber. There are therefore no apologies or leave of absence. In attendance, we have the Acting General Manager, Mr. Peter Porch, the Acting Director of Planning and Development, Mr. James Bonner, Executive Officer, Mrs. Jasmine Kerr, and Rates Officer and Assistant Executive Officer, Ms. Christine McConnell. We have two members of the gallery, two members of the public in the gallery. Thank you. Agenda item 1.4, General Manager is late reports. Do we have?
There are no late reports.
No late reports. Thank you. Agenda item 1.5 is, as Chair, I now request elected members to indicate whether they have any interest personally or via a close associate as defined in section 49 of the Local Government Act 1993, or any conflict as described in the Model Code of Conduct for Councillors in any item included in the agenda. Thank you. Agenda item 2 is the confirmation of minutes. There is a recommendation on page 6. 2.1. Councillor Young.
I move that the minutes of the ordinary meeting of council held on 25 February 2025 at 2 p.m. be confirmed as a true and correct record.
Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Walker. Thank you.
I'd just like to speak on that, please, as a correction. In the minutes, it says that I was had a leave of absence due to personal matters. It was for medical matters, and I did convey that in my email to.
I'm sure you did, Councillor Gregson, but the reality is we do not reveal personal reasons.
So it's only personal matters that and real for everything, isn't it?
It's about, yes.
Okay, right, thank you.
Councillor McQueenie.
I'm not, thanks, Mayor. I'm not sure if it's here or in another part, but I just, in so much as there was an item that was discussed without a relevant agenda paper that's subsequently been added to the council's website that related to that, that would be
The planning matter.
no, the item where the Office of Local Government letter was considered. The letter wasn't an attachment at the time, and comments were made about it without community being able to reference it. And some quotations. So I'm not sure it can go in the minutes because the minutes time it wasn't, but I'd like it written somewhere in perhaps in these minutes then that the place that that letter is now available in full for people to view its actual contents and the link for that.
Okay. Any further? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Unanimously. Thank you. There are minutes of a special meeting held on the 4th of March at agenda item 2.2. There is a recommendation on page 7. Deputy Mayor Simons, thank you.
That the minutes of the special meeting of council held on the 4th of March 2025 at 12:30 p.m. be confirmed as a true and correct record.
Is there a seconder, please? Councillor McQueenie?
No.
No. Is there a seconder? Councillor Young, thank you.
If I may, these minutes indicate that a decision was made. In another document, it talks about no decision made at the meeting. So I'm not sure if I raise it then or now.
Thank you.
It's for a confidential session.
We'll take it on notice.
Yeah.
Thank you. Nothing further. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. And item 2.3 is the date and purpose of workshops held. There were 2 held during the month. There is a recommendation on page 9. Deputy, thank you.
The council notes the information.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Walker, thank you. Councillor Churchill.
Yes, can I just make a small correction? I think on the Tuesday, 4th of March meeting, I think the time that started was probably correct, but 2:25 finish is probably not. It'll be very quick. It says 2:15 commencement and 2:25. Oh, sorry, they're 2 different dates for the 2 different
Oh,
meetings. Pardon
I
me?
see what you're saying, yes.
Yeah.
That can be corrected for the record, councillor, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, it is the one meeting.
It is the one meeting, yeah. That's right. That's fine.
Thank you. Nothing further. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Agenda item 3 is public question time. There is a question that we received on the 25th of October from Mr. Hodson, and the Acting General Manager's response is there. Jim? So, General Manager, do you wish to add anything to that?
Nothing to, oh, well, yes, I will, Madam Mayor, yes, we've been in contact, staff have been in contact with property owners associated with the matter, and there will be correspondence going out to Mr. Hodgson in the next day.
Thank you. Agenda item 3.2,
Just
there are
before you
no
move on.
questions on notice.
Just before you move on, please.
Sorry,
You said the 25th of October, that was be 25th of February, wouldn't it?
sorry. Where are you referring it to?
You said the 25th of
Oh,
October.
well, I'm sorry,
and
I
it should have been
I said the
25th of
20,
February.
I thought I said the 25th of October.
Yeah.
That's what I said, but
February,
it wasn't the
February,
receipt that Mr. Had you been at the meeting, Mr. Hodgson was here in the chamber.
Yeah.
And he addressed council.
February, yeah.
So questions on notice,
Neil?
we have nil. Questions without notice, you don't have any at the moment.
I don't have any unless
But
we,
I would like to ask the members of the gallery if they do have.
I can't hear what they're saying.
If you would just wouldn't mind stating your name, sir, that would be
My
great.
name's Justin Moyes.
Thank you,
Richard Cox.
thank you.
I'm just helping him out. We live in Barton Avenue, 64, 66.
Mhm.
Neighbour has had a sewage problem since January. We have approached a couple of times. After several visits over here, we've eventually got the environmental officer to come out. 3 visits here, eventually did come out. Look, it does look like it's sorted out. Concern that Mr. Cox has got is that for about 3 months, there was very limited movement. It meant that he couldn't turn on his air conditioning, his heating, because the smell was actually disgusting. It's actually, we were down cleaning the beach. Some tourists came past. They wanted to stop and have a little picnic there with their kids. Lasted about 30 seconds, backed up and disappeared. So I suppose we've been told it's been sorted out. We haven't received anything back officially. I suppose Richard would just like to extend his concerns about the length of the time and making sure it does get sorted out, I suppose.
Certainly.
Not too sure
Thank
there's a
you.
100% question in there, but we would like to.
No, thank you very much for raising the concerns. And I'm sure the Acting General Manager will take the question on notice
Sure.
and be in touch.
Okay, yes.
Thank you,
Thank you.
thank you. You are welcome to
You're
stay for the rest of the meeting.
He can't hear you.
He'll be here then.
You want to stay?
That's a very good excuse.
Thank you.
Run whilst you can.
Justin Moyes.
MOI, yes.
Thank you. There are no further questions on notice. Agenda item 4 is the planning section. Yes, under Regulation 25 of the Local Government Meeting Procedures, Regulations 2015, as chairperson, I hereby declare council is now acting as a planning authority under the provisions of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993 for section 4 of the agenda. Thank you, councillor Walker.
I'll move that council now acts as a planning authority at 2:11 p.m.
Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in
No, you
favour?
need a second.
Oh, seconder, sorry.
Second.
Deputy Mayor Simons. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Councillors, I have been informed by the General Manager that there was an administrative error in the reports in relation to this matter. So we are requesting a deferral motion. It matter be deferred to a specific date, Mr. Bonner, to a specific date,
Next council meeting.
the next council meeting. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I'll move that council defers the planning matter,
Agenda item 4.1.
agenda item 4.1 to the next ordinary council meeting.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Churchill, thank you. Councillor McQueenie?
Can I, through you, Mayor, can I just understand that communication will be made with the people about this matter that it's been deferred and why? Right,
Yes.
thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. If there's nothing further, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Agenda. Yes. Here we go, the planning. Councillor,
Madam, I move that council no longer acts as a planning authority at 2:12 PM.
thank you, Councillor Young. Seconder? Very good, thank you. So, under Regulation 25 of the Local Government Meeting Procedures, I hereby declare that council is no longer acting as a planning authority under the provisions of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993 for Section 4 of the agenda. I will put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Agenda item 5 is the financial reports for February 2025. There is a recommendation on page 24. Councillor Churchill, thank you.
I move that council receives and notes the financial reports as attached to this report for the period ended February 2025.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Gregson, thank you. Councillor Churchill, do you wish to comment on the motion?
Only to say that these are the same reports that went before the audit panel this morning, and there was no one dissented from any of the items that I'm aware of.
That is good news. Any other questions or comments in relation to finances? Councillor McQueenie?
Just whether now is appropriate to note Ms. Blaine's departure and thank her for this paper and every.
I'm sorry?
Whether this is an appropriate time to thank Ms. Blaine or later on for her work over the last 4 years.
If council if a councillor wishes to do that, you could quite comfortably do it at
Thank
the
you.
end of the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Anything further? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Agenda item 6 is section 24 committee reports. There is a report on the Springbank Elder Care Committee meeting the 30th of October 2024. There is a recommendation on page 27. Councillor Walker.
I'll move that the minutes of the Springbank Elder Care Committee meeting held on the 30th of October 2024 be received and noted, and 2, that the recommendation contained therein for the appointment of Robert Kelly be approved.
Is there a seconder? Deputy Mayor Simons, thank you. Any comment, Councillor Walker?
No, sorry, yes.
Yes.
Yes, we have welcomed Robert to our first meeting, and he's working with us. All
Any-
things considered, even with the next agenda item, everything's going quite well.
Through the mayor.
Councillor Gregson.
Item number 6, residents morning tea. Is that an annual event, or is that a weekly, monthly event to bring residents together for?
It's a yearly.
Oh, yearly.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Have you considered bringing it more frequently to bring the
No.
residents together?
No,
Yeah.
no, it's mainly, if I may, Mayor, It's mainly for residents to come to count, we have it in here, come to council and discuss anything that they need to discuss, or, and also just as a get together, but no, we haven't decided. We haven't even thought of bringing it in.
No, I know.
Yeah.
And therefore, councillors are invited to come along and meet
Yeah,
the residents.
They will, yeah.
Yep. Well, thank you.
Thank you. If there's nothing further, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? The motion is carried. Thank you. The agenda item 6.2 is the Springbank Elder Care Committee meeting the 17th of February 2025. There is a recommendation on page 29. Councillor Walker.
Yes, I move that the minutes of the Spring Bay Elder Care Committee meeting held on the 17th of February 2025 be received and noted.
Seconder. Councillor Gregson, thank you. Any comment, Councillor Walker? Thank you. No. Questions? Nothing further. I'll put the motion.
I'll just
Councillor
quickly,
Edwards, yes.
for Councillor Gregson's, it says, one of the motions in their general business, one of the comments they made was to get a gazebo so for residents to come together as a community, I presume in the lawn section, which would answer your, somewhere where they could stick a Barbie out there. It's a great idea.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Agenda item 6.3 is the Marine Infrastructure Committee minutes, the 17th of February 2025. There is a recommendation, page 32. Thank you, Councillor Walker.
Thank you. I'll move that the minutes of the Marine Infrastructure Committee meeting held on the 17th of February 2025 be received and noted.
Seconded. Councillor Edwards, thank you. Councillor Walker, do you wish to comment?
Other than to say that the committee is working quite well. And that's about it. Yeah.
Council's always very grateful for the commitment of our volunteer
Absolutely.
committee members. Thank you. If there's nothing further, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Agenda item 6.4 is the Coles Bay Hall Committee minutes of the 3rd of March 2025. There is a recommendation on page 37. Councillor Churchill, thank you.
I move that the minutes of the Coles Bay Hall Committee meeting held on 3rd of March 2025 be received and noted.
Seconder. Councillor Young, thank you. Councillor Churchill, do you wish to comment on the minutes?
I thought I did, but I can't remember. Minor thing. It says that Nigel Cairns adjourned the meeting. I think he really closed the meeting. I don't think it was an adjournment. There's nothing else that arises really, except that the annex is getting well underway. There is a complication around our use of it at the moment, which I believe the General Manager is dealing with, and other staff are dealing with this. So hopefully, when this opens within the month, it might be ready to use and start to be used.
Which will be good news for the Coles Bay community after the work they've done. Councillor Edwards and Councillor Gregson.
I've had a couple of phone calls from concerned Coles Bay residents in regard to that a potential commercial operation will infringe upon the community's use of the building. My friends in the Mahjong group are very concerned that if they have a childcare centre or another commercial building, that their access to the kitchen and various other areas will be restricted. I just want to make sure that that's not the case, so I can put their minds to ease. Is there a defined community group area which will be for their use and the access to kitchens and toilets at all times?
Councillor Churchill.
There was discussion around this at the last meeting. I think they'll find a way through it. I would hope that both things can operate, and I don't know how it'll work out yet under the rules of childcare and the like, but hopefully they'll be able to work a timetable so that both can work, but possibly not at the same time. We don't know.
That doesn't sound terribly reassuring.
I know it doesn't sound terribly reassuring, but we can only work within the legislation for childcare, or the other option, of course, is not to do the childcare. I would like to see both happening, if it's at all possible. But because if that is prevented from happening, it effectively means that perhaps other commercial interests will be affected.
As in a doctor, which is an issue.
And there's a lot of community uses that could be put to that are commercial in nature. So I think this is what the acting general manager is trying to work his way through at the moment with staff to see if we can't get solutions to both of these issues.
Well, I'd just like to emphasise that we definitely need to. It's a community hall at the end of the day, not a private business, and we need to ensure that the local people have their access to the hall to continue their activities that they currently do. I think it's of paramount importance.
Absolutely.
Mr. Hodge, do you want to add anything to that? You've been dealing with the whole agreement, lease, whatever, for that matter.
Certainly, Madam Mayor. The matter that we have there with regard to the leases is the same as we've had with other buildings, and we're working our way through that process in terms of additional users on what is ultimately Crown land. We've had success with those other leases, and effectively we've been promised success with this one, but it's got a process to work its way through. Beyond that, we encourage the whole committee to consider how they might be able to meet the needs of community members.
Thank you, Councillor Gregson and Councillor Young.
Through the Mayor, I'd like to address the Acting General Manager and Councillor Churchill. It is my impression that the hall was used as a temporary doctor's surgery at one stage. Where is that, and is it going back to the upgraded hall, please?
Yes, certainly I can respond to that, Madam Mayor. Yes, it was for a time subject to the availability of doctors and the patronage of the doctors who were going there. So there were problems with both of those, both with being able to provide doctors to go there as opposed to stay at Bicheno and have enough business at Coles Bay to sustain them being there, and being able to free up doctors from Bicheno to go. So yes, there's been a service offered there before. There is facility at the hall to be able to enable that to occur again in the future, should that be a viable option for health providers in the area.
Councillor Young.
Madam Mayor, I'd like the minutes to show Councillor Edwards' concern about the question of the use of that facility at Coles Bay, just so it's brought to everyone's attention. The council has considered it.
Thank you, Councillor Young. Nothing further on the Coles Bay Hall Committee minutes. I will put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. Thank you. Agenda item 7 is the information report from the Director of Works and Infrastructure and our Acting General Manager, Mr. Porch. There is a recommendation on page 41. Councillor Walker.
Thank you. I'll move that council notes the information.
Thank you. Seconded Councillor Young. Councillor Walker, do you wish to?
I have a couple of questions, if I may, Madam Mayor,
Certainly.
to Mr. Porch. So my first one is on page 39 on Qualified Tree Risk Assessment Process, in brackets QTRA, completed for February. Were there, through you, Madam Mayor, were there any trees that needed attention with the assessment?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The assessment is done on those trees that we feel are presenting a level of risk, and subject to how they rate, action may then be programmed or not. We haven't noted the location of this tree, and I couldn't tell you the outcome of that assessment. However, if it was certainly found to be problematic, there would be operational actions programmed from that.
Yeah, thank you. And my second one is not necessarily a question, more a statement on, again on page 39, the new car park formed in conjunction with Tas Water at the renew Orford Pump Station at the Bird Sanctuary.
Radar Beach.
We were informed that there was going to be formed car parking there, but not less than what there used to be. It's quite disappointing to see that, you know, first of all, the locals have had to deal with the fence being put up unbeknownst to them with the bird sanctuary, and also now that this car parking area, there's only 5 spaces there now for people to park. You can't access the area like you used to be able to do. If they needed the bollards are the bollards there to protect the infrastructure?
Through you, Madam Mayor,
Suggest?
yes, the bollards are there to protect the infrastructure, and when I saw them going in, I was concerned and contacted Tas Water, and my advice to them was that the works there needed to reflect the PROSA master plan. And when I consulted that a little more closely, I found that there were bollards marked on the plan where they had put them. So it does reflect the consultation and the agreed plan for that area.
Well, all I can say, Mr. Portland, to the people, that's unfortunate. However, it is what it is. Again, can I go to page 40? I mean, the January, down the bottom, customer requests, it seemed quite high. That was received in January. What were the requests to make it so high?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I need to go back to the report for January, so I can take that on notice and come back to you on that.
That's fine. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. That's all.
Councillor Edwards and Councillor Gregson.
Just so as Councillor Wilkie knows, I raised the same issue with the Acting General Manager yesterday about Radar Beach. And I think that it's something which, the access to the area which has been there for generations, where you go down and sit there and eat your fish and chips and look at what's going on, is unbeknown to anyone and not council's fault, been taken away. And I think it's a great shame, and I still think we should maybe be conferring with Tas Water, not just saying nothing can be done. Well, let's see what can be done. Not just throw in the towel instantly, because it really has cheesed off an awful lot of locals. Secondly, through you, Madam Mayor, to the Acting General Manager, has there ever been any further discussion or investigation or work on the dreaded Orford rivulet and the flooding into Strawberry Hills Court?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, to date, there has not been any more work done on that. So it remains the property and responsibility of Parks. Council does not have a lease or licence over that area or any responsibility to it.
Now, I realise it is not a council issue, and I've hammered politicians and anyone who wants to listen or not listen about it. But maybe as a council we could implore, because Parks say it's State Rivers and they say it's some parks, and nobody wants to take responsibility. Well, the time needs to come that someone takes responsibility, because it's the bank. It'll rain again soon. It always rains after a long dry spell, and then the bank will be gone, and we'll have flooded houses in Strawberry Hills Court again, and we'll go, oh dear, we better do something about that. Perhaps the time to be having some serious discussions with those people who don't want to take responsibility is now, before it rains. When there's 4 or 5 metres of bank gone and Tas Water's pipe hanging in mid-air, as was last year, it's a fair indication that there's a problem.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. I'm sure the General Manager will take that on.
Thank you very much. I know it's not the General Manager's job, but I'm just imploring that.
Councillor Gregson, then Councillor Young.
Right. Through the Mayor, I'd like to address the Acting General Manager. On page 41, number 2, St Margaret's Court, Swansea, 2 pit upgrades, install new V grate and concrete V drain completed. I'm very pleased with that, and I was just wondering whether you had inquired with regard to the curb and guttering at the end of that court, and who was responsible for
Through you, Madam Mayor, that's been an ongoing issue for some time associated with a subdivision at the end of the court. Council has no plan at this stage to intervene and complete curb and channel works for that development, and it's probably an ongoing task to hand on to the new plan to the Director of Planning and Development when they start.
And just a couple of things here. I noticed on page 42, it's got state growth priority weed contract. That'd be for the roads and not serrated tussock in fields.
To Madam Mayor, yes, that is for the Tasman Highway.
Yes, right. And also, just a couple of things I'm going to clarify. It's got here Naylor Avenue, Garnet Avenue and Harvey Court. That's all additional, which should be, it's not, and also materials with for Lou with a View. That's at Swansea, so that could also be noted, and also Duck Park at in Swansea as well. And the other one is Ferndale Road Bridge. I still don't know where that is.
Through Madam Mayor, Ferndale Road Bridge is on the northern side of Bishop Island.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay. Yeah. And Holcombe Court is at Orphan, so that hasn't been included. And the installation of gravel road advisory signs on Ribbon Road, I assume that's at Ribbon at the end. Okay. Thank you, Peter.
Councillor Young.
Oh, thank you.
Sorry.
I'll just wait for
I just said Peter, but I just
Mr. Gregson to finish.
Yes, I finished. I finished.
Councillor Young.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the General Manager, it might be appropriate that council write to the state crown rather than nominate a government department to raise the issues relating to Strawberry Court, because it does require the state to take responsibility. It's not for us to work out which internal department deals with the matter. It's for the state government, and if you're not sure to whom to write, do as I did once, write to the Solicitor General and he'll make certain it gets attended to.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Young, for your advice. I'm sure the Director, Works and Infrastructure, also known as our Acting General Manager, will have that all in hand.
And one other matter, following on the issue raised by Mr. Gregson, Councillor Gregson, I'm sorry. He has the same problem I have. He doesn't know where all the streets in the municipality are. It might be very handy if there is a map, that if it could be posted either here or in council chambers somewhere, so we can see what streets are where. I suspect there might be a map. There used to be a requirement under the Local Government Act that council have a map of all the streets and roads. It would be handy. It might save a lot of time, because then I could read it coming in, and so could Councillor Gregson.
Yes, Councillor Young, it could be as simple as the officers just putting the name of the town after the street. Councillor Churchill.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. On page 42, there's mention here of the Coles Bay Triathlon, and that was brought to our attention at the Community Connect session at Coles Bay last week. This person was not complaining, she was commenting about the impact that that the road closure there is having on business through that period. It seems to be having quite a serious impact, and she was just wondering, and I think it's a fair comment and something for us to keep in the back of our mind, because this is going to be an annual event. She was asking if there could be another way of using the spaces there that are not closing off the road for that period of time. So it will be raised, hopefully, when that application for help or assistance is brought to us next year.
General Manager, your comment?
Madam Mayor, no, we have written to the triathlon people when we became aware that there wasn't a great deal of consultation regarding that and some impact on the businesses to make them aware that they need to proactively engage with the council and not consider it a fait accompli that the road closure will be affected.
Thank you.
A good outcome from the community pop-up session, I think, councillor.
Yes.
Any other questions or comments? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Carried, thank you. Agenda item 8 is the officers' reports requiring a decision. 8.1 is the Morgan Springbank Council half-term plan 2025 to 2027. There is a recommendation on page 45. Councillor Churchill, thank you.
I move that council adopts the half-term plan 2025 to 2027 as attached to this agenda item to inform the development of the 2025-26 and 2026-27 financial year budgets and annual plans.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Gregson, thank you. Do you wish to speak to the motion, councillor?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just to say that that this half-term plan, which is in effect and it's in the agenda here, but needs to be emphasised, is that it is actually designed to take us through to the period at the end of this current council period, so in other words, a bit less than the next 2 years, and it can better describe what we hope to do in that shorter term than perhaps the long-term plan does. It's not as clear as this plan is for that next 2 year period.
Thank you. Councillor Gregson.
Through the Mayor, I'd just like to ask whether this half-term plan, if approved today, will be available on the council website.
Madam Mayor, that is correct. It will be posted under our strategies and plans.
Right, and also I'd just like to note that there's no conflict of interest, but the cover has a very nice photo of the Mayfield jetty, and that's been attributed to me. Now, I had
The jetty?
Yes, yeah, oh yes, here we are.
You didn't build that, did you?
Yeah, no, I didn't build it, but I took the photo.
Did you, Councillor Gregson?
Yes, I did. Yeah,
Oh, that's fine.
yeah, and
You
I,
claiming copyright, councillor?
oh, no. I was going to explain that this photo was placed in the former Goulburn Springbank Council Photography Prize, and obviously someone with quite good taste has selected for the front cover.
Councillor Gregson, is that you?
No, that's what I try to.
Councillors, could I please remind you that we are in a formal council meeting? There is not banter across the table. Thank you.
But I'd just like to say that, with all due respect, I had nothing to do with the selection of that very good photo.
I concur with Councillor Gregson. I had nothing to do with it either.
Thank you, councillors. Any other questions or comments? Nothing? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Carried, thank you. Agenda item 8.2 is the revised development assessment panels. The recommendation, quite lengthy, is on page 55. I'm not suggesting that whoever moves the motion needs to read the whole. I'd suggest that it simply be in accordance with the draft letter in the agenda. So, do I have a motion? Councillor Churchill?
I move the council makes the following submission to the consultation of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act Development Assessment Panels, DAP Bill 2025, as presented below.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Seconder? Councillor Walker, thank you. Councillor Churchill, do you wish to speak to it? You did have some concerns around this whole process, as I recall.
I do have a lot of concerns around this whole process, but I do think that Mr. Purves has done a particularly good job in terms of presenting our, I think, council's position on the DAPs in this document, and there's certainly nothing that's been brought forward in this new period that definitely says that they're a good idea and they should go ahead. And I think that that's been described fairly well on behalf of council.
Any, councillor Gregson?
With regard to DAPS, this is the second bill brought before the state parliament. It was rejected initially by the Legislative Council, and now it's coming back in a slightly different form. I can't see any benefit of DAPS, especially to do with council matters, and I think the author, Mr. Purvis, has done a very good job in formulating our retort. So congratulations to him, but I have grave reservations about DAPS. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Councillor Churchill, I have to agree with you. I think Mr. Purvis actually captured our concerns very well in the letter as a council. If there's nothing further, I put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Agenda item 8.3 is the LGAT general meeting motions. There are recommendations on page 60, which I think we will need to deal with individually. Yes, thank you. So we'll start with recommendation 1. Making an assumption that council agrees with the recommendation.
Madam Mayor, I don't quite understand what is meant by paragraph 1. I've read it several times.
Sorry,
It
you don't
doesn't seem to
understand
make
what-
sense.
Sorry, you don't understand what, councillor?
On page 59, there's motion 1, and there's a comment about council hasn't experienced budget hardships. Is that Hobart Council or our council?
Through you, Madam Mayor, that's our council with regard to line marking funds provided by the state.
So are we trying to, send the money back, or what's the problem?
Through you,
I don't
Madam
quite
Mayor,
understand how it fits into this kind of thing.
Through you, Madam Mayor, we're not getting any funds from the state necessarily. Neither are we losing any funds from the state necessarily, but Hobart are reporting that they are. And council support for this motion would support Hobart City Council's position that they are receiving less funds, or likely to receive less funds in the future than they have done, and that we would posit that that is not a good situation, and that state should be continuing to fund line marking at least to the level they have done, if not more.
It doesn't say it. That's what I don't understand.
Councillor Young, can I just say that this is, as you know, you've been to LGAT meetings in the past.
Yes, I have.
This is simply a motion being put forward to the LGAT meeting and proposed by the City of Hobart, that there is an approach done as a whole of sector, so the whole of the local government sector, in relation to allocating funds for road marking. As the General Manager said, our council hasn't had any real detriment through our budget because of line marking. But if we can get the government to listen to a whole of sector position, then we may end up with some more funds. We can but hope. So the question is, I'm attending the LGAT meeting next week, I believe it is, and basically I need to know how council wants me to vote on these matters. Do we support Hobart City Council's motion to approach the government for a whole of sector funding for line marking? Councillor Churchill?
I'm prepared to put that motion if you want these.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Motions.
Yes.
I move that recommendation 1, that council supports the motion proposed by City of Hobart for the LGAT April General Meeting, for LGAT to formally approach the state government to request an urgent increase to the allocation of state-based funds for line marking allocations on local government roads to more closely align with the quantum required to meet safe operating standards.
Is there a seconder, please? Councillor Walker. Any further questions on it? It is just simply our, it will be our position on that, at that motion at the LGAT meeting. Councillor Edwards?
I'm personally opposed to it. They've got to stand on their own 2 feet at some stage and stop having the handout to paint green lines down every other road in Hobart and stop people parking where they want to go, and hence Collins Street. And so, and stop flying their mayor around the world to conferences. Put that money into a tender paint.
This is a whole,
I know
this
this.
is a whole of government.
I know, but I
the state
oppose
government
it.
sector.
It's Hobart putting it up.
Councillor Young? Councillor Young?
Madam Mayor, I oppose the motion. City of Hobart has plenty of money. We need the money, they don't. So when they get surplus funds that are really questionable, we ought to get it more, so I'm against the motion.
Councillor Young, I need to point out that this is not about the City of Hobart getting more funding. It is about a whole of local government sector getting more funding if it's required for line marking. It's not the City of Hobart.
Well, I thought
It's
City of Hobart
LGAT,
was
it's
the
LGAT
one
have,
seeking
the
it.
City of Hobart have proposed the motion. And when we get to the LGAT meeting, they may not get a seconder. But I just need to know what this council's position is in it, on the proposal, so that I know how to vote at the next meeting. Councillor Churchill.
Yeah, just, I may be speaking out of turn here, but the emphasis is on the state-based funds for line marking. It is not just about line marking in Hobart. That's my interpretation.
That's exactly right, Councillor. Councillor Edwards?
Yes, whilst I take your point, Glamorgan's line marking requirements are minimal. The government only has so much money to hand out. If we're handing it out to paint lines around municipalities everywhere, we don't get any to start with. So why would we be supporting giving more to everywhere else?
Can I ask a question?
Well, I'll put the motion then. Let's see what the outcome is. I did have a seconder, didn't I? Councillor Walker, thank you. I did, thank you. So I will put the motion and we'll test it on the floor as this council's support for that motion. So all those in favour? Councillor Churchill, Councillor Walker, Mayor, Councillor McQueenie and Councillor Gregson. Those against? Deputy Mayor, Councillor Young and Councillor Edwards. Motion is carried. Thank you. Recommendation 2 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5, 3. 5, 3, yes. Recommendation 2 is the council does not support the proposed motion by City of Hobart for the LGAT April general meeting.
It does.
No. The council does not support the proposed motion. Deputy Mayor,
Are we moving the motion here?
if you wish.
I'll move the council does not support the proposed motion by the City of Hobart for the LGA April General Meeting for the LGAT to lobby the Tasmanian Government to adopt the 7-star energy efficiency requirements of the National Construction Code 2022, and that voting members at the April LGAT General Meeting make the information provided by the Master Builders Association of Tasmania known to the delegates in the discussion of the motion.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Edwards, thank you. Do you wish to comment, Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, I think that's a sensible way to begin. For Tasmania, we do have a very different requirement in the way of energy efficiencies, and applying those national codes to our houses in Tasmania would be very difficult and quite a few problems. The airtight part of the houses that they are strongly recommending that is done to achieve 7 stars. So we just need another way of looking at it perhaps, and I guess this is starting that process.
For council, the council's position, as I understand it, is that we are not supporting the proposed motion.
That's the
Councillor Gregson.
I'd just like to possibly speak against that the motion, because this really is a state government issue, the 7-star energy efficiency. It was introduced a few years ago by the state government, but there was considerably lobbying from the master builder to say kind of defer it for a while.
Can I
And
just
let-
interject there? It's a national code.
It's a national code. Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not a state code, it's a national code.
But it's based on the states. So you've got Queensland, Victoria. It's not a federal.
Councillor Gregson, can I just stop
No,
you there? Yeah, I take your point.
Yep.
What you want to do. We need, this is trying to determine council's position
Yep.
on the City of Hobart motion in relation to that.
Yes.
So I'm happy to take more comment from you, but I don't need a history lesson.
Oh, yes, no, I'm just getting background, that's all. And it is state-based. It's not a federal issue. So therefore, it's Tasmania. Tried to bring it a couple of years ago, but it was rejected, principally on the master builders lobby. Now, it would be hard in Tasmania, but it could be basically altered. So I would say I would support the City of Hobart in this case to try and have it introduced, but it may have to be altered and compromised. So, but to try and start the actual process, I think it would be a good thing, just not to reject it outright.
Councillor Churchill.
Yeah, we operate, sorry, Mayor, if I may, we currently operate under 6 star, is that correct?
That's more than I can tell you. Mr. Bonner might be able to answer that. We currently operate under a 6-star process, Mr. Bonner, is that?
Oh, that's beyond my knowledge.
But, okay.
Apologies.
Can we take that question on notice, Councillor Churchill?
Yes, but I think it's relevant to
Yes.
how I vote on this, because if we're operating on 6 star now, and I believe we've been doing that for a long time, I think 12 years ago when my house was built, it was operated on 6 star, and I would have thought that in a 10-year period we perhaps should be looking at energy efficiency further, and I couldn't logically see why moving to a 7-star rating, I know there's added cost, but that added cost is quite often up the front, and often throughout the life of that building, that added cost is more than covered by the energy saving that's brought through with these sorts of programs. So by instinct, I sort of would prefer to see us moving to a more energy efficient position.
Councillor Churchill, I think taking on board your comments, I'm inclined to not support the proposed motion, so basically vote in favour of this, because I think we need to get more information around it before we can actually support a statewide, LGAT statewide lobbying. That would be my view. Councillor Edwards?
Yeah, I strongly support not supporting the motion. How are we going to build? We've got a housing crisis, which we're told about every other day. They're looking at adding, up to 60, well, depends which figure you look at, but up to $60,000 additional to build a home. If somebody wants to build a house and it's 1 star, it's their business, they can pay the power bill. Once again, we're just getting stuck into everybody's lives, telling everybody how they should and shouldn't do it. I have a classic example at the moment where we are not allowed to have the colour of roof we want on a shed because of an energy rating. But we'll get you an engineered solution for $5,000. It's just ridiculous. Just stay out of people's lives.
Councillor McQueenie, you had a comment?
I was wondering if you could just clarify there, you mentioned that you were attending. When is this going to be raised?
Next Tuesday, next Wednesday, the 2nd of April.
Right, so it's
The LGAT meeting is the 2nd of April.
So on notice is likely to not come in before then because logistically it can't.
No. And can I say, Councillor McQueenie, that sometimes the dates simply don't line up. Sometimes we have to go as the delegates to LGAT and hope that we have enough information around Council's position. Mr. Bonner, did you wish to comment on something?
Mayor, I just confirm that yes, there's a 6-star energy rating for Tasmania currently per dwellings.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor, I think everybody spoke.
Because I haven't finished, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
If I can.
Yes.
If that's all right. So in here, it talks about if there are natural disasters and replacements. This is my ignorance around how this works. So do I take it from this that replacement values are automatically higher if there is a higher rating?
higher than what?
It's information I don't know, councillor, I'm
Right.
sorry. Mr Bonner, do you have,
Through Matt, well, the higher the rating, the more cost of the building. It's like bushfire,
Yeah.
you've got to build to a higher standard, so the construction cost, reconstruction cost would be higher. Yes, to meet that same standard.
councillor Young, sorry, Deputy Mayor, councillor Young, did you wish to add something? And
Yes,
I'm
I
going
just
to
want to-
ask the Deputy Mayor to close debate on it as he
Well, I was
moved the
going to
motion.
speak in favour of the motion, not supporting Hobart Council's motion. Houses are expensive enough. We can't build enough. We've had all sorts of summits about them with hundreds of people attending, reports and wonderful public statements from our ministers of the Crown. Yet we still have not enough houses, and we're talking about putting the cost of construction up. So I'm against the Hobart City Council motion and will vote in support of this motion.
Deputy Mayor, do you wish to close debate?
Yeah, just really quickly, just a couple of things. We do have a really good standard in Tassie with our energy rating. Any new houses have actually got a high level of energy efficiency. It's problematic to add one more piece to that. The houses that we are building now are insulated to the end. So the gains you can make by adding this extra cost, and part of this is about making houses airtight, becomes very difficult and very expensive. And for the small amount of gain that we would get in Tasmania, I don't believe it's worth the work and the cost that has to go towards it. So 6-star suits Tasmania, I think. I think perhaps a fair bit of this might be born out of buildings on the mainland who have quite a bit of different, particularly in Queensland, northern Queensland, southern Queensland. They have a whole different set of circumstances that they need to deal with, and we just probably don't need to deal with those circumstances. So,
Thank you. I'll put the motion. Bear in mind that this is council's position that we are not supporting the proposed motion by the City of Hobart. All those in favour? Councillor Young, Councillor Walker, Deputy Mayor Simons, Mayor Councillor McQueenie and Councillor Edwards. Those against, Councillor Churchill and Councillor Gregson are against. The motion is carried. Recommendation 3 is council votes in favour of the public open space contributions motions proposed by Brighton Council for the April 2025 LGAP general meeting. The motion is there. General Manager, could I, if I, yes, by all means, Councillor Young, move the motion and then I can ask the question of the General Manager. Yes, move the motion, Councillor Young?
Well, I have the motion right if I read it, or is it going to be changed when the
No,
General Manager
no,
says
no,
something about it?
as written, Councillor.
Well, the council votes in favour of the public open space contributions motion proposed by Brighton Council for April 2025 Local Government Association of Tasmania General Meeting.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Seconder, Councillor Gregson. If I may, councillors, Councillor Young will come to you in a minute. General Manager, we have a pretty strong open space policy, as I recall, open space contribution. This is just dealing with subdivisions. Is that how I'm reading it?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I may choose to defer to the.
Mr. Bonner, thank you. Mr. Bonner.
We have a public open space policy, but it's based on the provisions of the Building Miscellaneous Act, otherwise known as Log Bump, which only applies to subdivision. So Brighton Council's concern is that strata development also can impose a requirement for open space, and it's not captured under the provisions currently that only apply to subdivision, and a strata title is not a subdivision.
So My thoughts around that is that this is a good motion for Brighton to put
Yes.
in terms of planning
yeah,
and
support
for
it.
our
It's-
council.
Principally, if we look at the idea of contribution, it's based on a subdivision provides an additional demand on open space. The argument will be that it's a strata also provides additional demand that should be captured as well.
Thank you. Councillor Young, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, I do, Madam Mayor.
I'm sorry I jumped in on you.
That's all right, Madam Mayor, I'm used to it. I'll just wait till Councillor Gregson finishes ringing up England. I've got a hammer if you need it, Councillor Gregson. Swallow it, Councillor Gregson.
Hasn't you?
I move that Councillor Gregson be fined $20 for this offence.
Pay to a charity.
I
of
have a
his choice.
philosophical view about this. In order to make living reasonable, we need some degree of open space and some degree of greenery. And it is said that our city should go up rather than out. Whatever the rights and wrongs of that happen to be, we need greenery. And I'm a great fan of that principle that applies in Singapore, that if you're going to do a development, you've got to have over 100% of the lot in greenery. So you've got to put it in on the roof and in some of the floors of the high-rise building. And I think it'll help alleviate some of the debris that come from overbuilding. So I support it.
Councillor Edwards, then Councillor McQueenie.
I'm not having a good run. I'm opposing this one too. To me, it's another cost on the developer, another cost on housing. Strata units are very often bought by first home buyers and owners. And so there's an additional cost on the building of the strata unit. There'll be a bigger cost on the poor young first home owner trying to buy it.
Councillor McQueenie.
Just for my clarification, so I'm assuming, and to use a local example, the development, strata development at the back of the Anglican church, which had very condensed housing within it, strata housing. That this is the sort of, I don't mean that as a specific example, but it's that sort of development where there was no requirement for open community space, that it would apply, and we perhaps would have seen a less dense development. Again, I'm not talking about the development, I'm using it as an example.
No, as an example.
Like where a 20 whatever strata development happened, where there was no requirement under the scheme currently to have open space. Is that what we're talking about?
Councillor McQueen, I'm not sure that that development is a strata development. So, but I take your point. Your example. I see where you're coming from. That if it was a strata development, this would apply
Is
to
that
it.
sort of, yes.
That's accurate.
Through you, Mayor.
Mr. Bonner,
Yes, that
thank
is
you.
correct. It's not, at the moment, that is not a strata development. It may be occurred in the future, but at the moment, it's just a multi-dwelling
Yes.
housing development.
Right.
I
Yeah,
think
thank you.
Councillor McQueen was
Yeah.
Only using it as an example
Yes.
for the density of it.
Yeah.
The density
So
of it.
that's, thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
I'm a little unsure at the moment. I'm tempted perhaps not to support this. I can see that this might hurt affordable housing because often that housing is local dwelling, but potentially turned into strata titles further on as the houses may or may not be sold off. But it's I'd be interested in supporting it if it actually provided open space and wasn't necessarily a contribution to council in the form of a financial benefit. If it actually locked in the fact that you had to put a couple of less places on there and have a park, I would agree to that. But this seems to indicate that that it may well be in lieu of that space, you make a financial contribution, and that will get you what you need to do your development. So I'm a bit unsure, perhaps the planner might,
Okay.
Mr. Bonner might be able to help me with that one.
Oh, having said that, Mr. Bonner, if I may, I think the way I'm reading this is only LGAT lobbying the minister to actually work with councils plural. So I'm guessing we would have, so there would be a consultation period where we could put all our concerns and that. So this is really only supporting Brighton Council or the LGAT lobbying the minister to start a process, as I read it, but I might have that wrong. Mr. Bonner, is that a reasonable?
Yes, through you, Mayor, yes, that's correct. At the moment, there's no ability to levy contributions. So really it's looking at introducing a levy or the ability to levy, whether it would be the same as a straight subdivision or not. That'd be something that council could, based on the way at the moment, it says council can levy 5% for a contribution for open space. So up to 5%. So if one took the same pathway, and I don't know what path they would have, and said that council can also levy that for strata, council then could conduct its own policy and say for strata we will only levy 2%, for instance. And like small subdivisions, there's no ability to provide land. So the money is put towards and is set aside for improvement of public space areas in that immediate area or that locality.
So in terms of LGAT, in terms of council supporting Brighton's motion that LGAT lobbies, it appears to me on the surface that if they lobby, what we'll end up with is a consultation period not unlike what our recent DAP process is, where we can put our fors and against. Is that reasonable? All right.
We don't know.
Because I think the critical information is here, the planning office to work with councils to establish this. So if there's nothing further, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Councillor Walker, those in favour, please. Councillor Churchill, Councillor Young, Mayor, Councillor McQueenie and Councillor Gregson. Those against, the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Walker and Councillor Edwards. Thank you. Motion is carried. Recommendation 4 is again whether we support the intent of the motion from Waratah Wynyard Offshore Oil and Gas. There is the recommendation is there. Motion. Councillor Churchill, thank you.
The council indicates support for the intent of the motion and supports the LGAT in amending to remove part 1 of the motion to establish a position statement on offshore oil and gas exploration.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor McQueenie, thank you.
Madam Mayor, can I ask a question about the motion?
Certainly.
The motion deals with paragraph 1. What's paragraph 2 doing in the middle of it all? Do we have any view on that, or is it being passed or ignored, or is it being supported, or is it being voted against? What?
General Manager, can you help me out here? I think LGAT is LGAT. The motion that will go to the LGAT meeting, I believe, won't have position part 1 in the motion.
What about part 2?
They're only seeking support for the for LGAT to advocate the Tasmanian State and Federal Government to not approve any new offshore oil and gas explorations. Is that?
Yeah, that's correct. Both of the motions, the two parts of the motion show what Waratah Wynyard have proposed, and the recommendation is that council support the LGAT position by not including part 1 and only supporting part 2.
It doesn't say that in the motion that's been moved.
I think it does.
No, it doesn't. It's not there. I'm looking for the word.
Intent of the motion.
It's not there.
And yes, council indicates support for the intent of the motion and supports LGAT in amending to remove part one, because I think in the papers, there was, if I recall, there was, reasons why they want to remove part one. Yes, so that's the motion that will go to the meeting.
Well, Madam Mayor, I'll raise a point of order. The motion doesn't make sense.
It's standalone, it doesn't. No.
I'm
Doesn't
sorry,
make
Councillor
sense. It
McCready?
requires something to do with paragraph 2.
Councillor Young, can I take your point of order, but can I please seek some further advice around it, because at this point, rather than rule on your point of order. Can I do that?
Yes, Madam Mayor,
Thank you.
you're the boss.
Councillor McCready, you had a comment?
Well, just to clarify, because on what Councillor Young has mentioned, I assume, and I want to be sure if I'm right, that what Councillor Young might be suggesting is that simply point 2 of that motion in the box goes forward as the motion. Is that what's being suggested?
Are you asking me,
Yeah.
Councillor McCready?
Well, because that is a full motion, whereas the motion without the box has nothing to refer to.
Well, I'm, Councillor McQueen, you've asked me a question. I don't know what the motion means. Just because you don't deal with something doesn't mean to say that you're for it or against it. And that's, as I see, the problem in this motion. I'd have to vote for against it because it doesn't make sense.
General Manager?
Ordinary English doesn't
Yes.
make sense.
Madam
Could you
Mayor,
provide us some clarification,
I can
please?
provide you with some clarification that I believe that Councillor Young is correct. It's a little bit deficient in that it unless read with the box, reading it with the box, I believe it does make sense, but without the box it doesn't.
I think I do not agree with the ruling, but you've ruled what the English language says, Madam Mayor. Means I'll have to vote against it because I don't understand ordinary English.
Councillor Edwards?
Whether it's part 1 or part 2, I think it is absolutely ludicrous that as a local council, we're advocating to lobby the government to not approve any new offshore oil and gas exploration and development in Tasmanian and Commonwealth waters when we're undergoing an absolute energy crisis, price of power through the roof, and we're saying, oh no, you can't go and find any more. I just can't believe it.
So Councillor Edwards, how about this for a solution? I put the motion and we test it on the floor as to whether there is support from this council.
Sounded quite like it.
Just before, can I just add a comment? It's the Legat advocating for this. It's just not the Warm Springvale Council.
I didn't hear that,
Sorry,
Councillor.
yes, no,
I've got my hearing aids in,
Right,
but
yes,
you can whisper, but not quite.
No, that's fine. It's the Legat who's advocating this motion, not the Warm Springvale Council, and it's point 2 that's the pertinent here. And it says that the Legat advocates the Tasmanian state and federal government to not approve any new offshore oil and gas exploration and development in Tasmania and Commonwealth waters. That's what's being discussed, and the Mayor requires whether we are for or against that particular motion of point 2, I assume.
It doesn't deal with it, point 2, our
So
motion.
councillor, my solution is that I will put the motion to see if this council supports the stance that LGAT is asking. So all those in favour? Councillor
Can we have the
Churchill
motion again, please?
Sorry?
Can we have the motion again?
Well,
before
the motion is that council indicates support for the intent of the motion and supports the LGAT in amending to remove part 1 of the motion to establish a position statement on offshore oil and gas exploration. So this is whether we are indicating our support for the intent of that motion from Waratah Wynyard. So all those in favour? Councillor Churchill, Councillor Gregson are in favour. Those against? Councillor Edwards, Councillor McQueenie, Councillor Young, Councillor Walker, Deputy Mayor Simons, Mayor Arnold. The motion is lost. Thank you. So the vote. the vote from Glamorgan Springvale Council next week will indicate that there is no support in this council.
Now, Madam Mayor, I would like to ask you a question if I may. You're our delegate to Lagat.
Yes.
Does that mean that you support 1 and 2, or support 1 and not 2, or support 2 and not
No.
1,
No.
or against all of them? Just because those things will be raised at the Lagat meeting. What's your position, or what do you
I
think
just voted
council
against,
position
I just
on that?
voted against the motion to support it, councillor.
Support what though? That's the question. The whole thing doesn't make sense. So it leaves you going into the
No, it doesn't.
Lagat meeting,
Point of order,
not
Madam
knowing
Mayor,
where
that
our
it's
order
been,
is.
It's
the
been
point of
discussed.
order, it's been discussed, it's
Yes.
been voted on, so there is no more discussion.
Thank you,
Well, hang on.
thank you, councillor.
Sorry,
We'll move on.
Well, I'd like to have my dissent from your ruling on the matter noted in the minutes.
my question is, can an alternate motion now be put?
No.
It's Waratah's motion.
It's Waratah's motion.
Well, it isn't, Waratah's only the box bit.
Yes, and
That's, because I agree, it doesn't make sense. It refers to removing part 1, it refers to supporting LGAT, but has LGAT said that? No, they haven't. Waratah's referring to LGAT. It doesn't make sense. I agree with councillor Young, and that's why, in that context only, I'd just like to understand if an alternate one that is clear can be put. If it
We
can't
haven't
be
got
put,
one.
no.
Haven't got a
I
position.
think, I think the matter has been dealt with, and this council has now voted
It's all a bit
not
hard.
to support, so that's the position I have to take to the LGAT meeting.
Then if I could have the same comments made against my vote, because it was because I couldn't.
Thank you. Agenda item 8.4 is the LGAT general meeting. It's council's position on the development assessment panel. There is a recommendation on page 64. There's actually, I think we need to have these in separate motions, please. There's recommendation 1 and recommendation 2. Do I have a motion? Recommendation 1,
Yes, I move
Deputy.
recommendation 1 that council 1 supports LGAT in seeking major amendments to the Development Assessment Panel DAC bill, which may propose a series of significant changes based on the position endorsed by the sector at the general meeting. And 2, notes that this support is driven by the following concerns: ministerial direction contains technical flaws with the proposed process that have not been addressed from the previous consultation. The need for the Development Assessment Panel proposal has not been established. Benefits are not clear, and there are many technical problems with the mechanisms proposed in the draft bill.
is there a seconder? Councillor Churchill. Do you need to speak to it?
It's a very complex issue, and I'm really only guided by the report that Mr. Purvis did for us, and it seemed to be his recommendations that there needed to be a lot more work done on development assessment panels and how they might work in Tasmania. I'm definitely not against the idea of investigating how they might work in our favour in planning, because I think we do need the opportunity at times with our planning scheme to perhaps have that type of instrument in the planning scheme, but potentially what's been proposed isn't what we should be agreeing to.
Councillor Churchill and Councillor Young.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I've seconded this motion, but my preferred position is the one that's described on page 62 in the first paragraph. I prefer to reject the bill outright for so many reasons. I mean, it doesn't in any substantial way improve the planning scheme, and there's not enough substantial change to this one over the original one, and we're just providing yet another pathway for development. Why do we need more pathways? It's just crazy because we all then have to work out even which pathway the thing goes into before development planning even starts. So I think it's totally unnecessary, and I hate to sound so pessimistic, but I really don't believe that's required.
As the recommendation says, so this is LGAT trying to develop a whole of sector position on DAPS, and that really needs to, and it appears that the whole of sector view of DAPS is reflective of our view, or our view is reflective of that. So this is just, if you like, shoring up support for LGAT for that motion, I think. So that's correct, thank you. Okay, Councillor Gregson.
Fine. Just this here on page 62, and I'll just concur with Councillor Churchill. There's three options here. Reject the bill outright, again, major amendments and minor amendments. So the two recommendations are reflective of one, major amendments, and recommendation two is really a minor amendment. So my preference would be to reject the bill outright, but we're given two recommendations, and I would prefer recommendation one based on what's been received.
Councillor Gregson, just remember that this is not going to the government at all. This is going to LGAT, to our association, for them to develop a whole of sector position. And we've already established our position on the DAPS. If there's nothing further, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Recommendation 2 is a suggested advice to LGAT in relation to our preferred position on the options C and D. Mover. Motion. Mr. Bonner, could I just ask a question? You may not answer it, or the General Manager. If the last wording in D says retain PA does not have technical expertise. Can you explain, please, Mr. Bonner?
Planning authority does not have technical expertise.
Oh, in the
DAP.
In the DAP.
So
Thank you. Right, thank you. Okay. But we're trying, but we want that to be in the bill. Is that?
We're comfortable with it being retained in the bill.
Thank you. Right. Motion, recommendation 2. Councillors? This is only reflective of our position that we set in the previous agenda item. Deputy Mayor?
I'll move the council advises the GAT that the following options bracketed C and D are its preferred options. C, council as applicant, TAS homes / social housing and other housing only over a threshold, brackets either 5 million, 2 million, or 10 million, 5 million. D, council as applicant, TAS homes, homes TAS / social housing and tightly defined other developments, brackets 10 mil, 5 mil, but remove significant and planning authority conflict interest criteria. Stop, retain PA, which should be an authority, does not have technical expertise.
Is there a seconder, please? Councillor Churchill, thank you. Deputy Mayor?
Again, I think it's reflecting what we did in the other approval we made, but it is a somewhat confusing motion, and I don't wish to speak to it.
Councillor Churchill?
Yeah, I think the Deputy Mayor is correct. Confusion is a large part of this. I think it's been presented in a very much in the planning way. We've probably got one person in the room here who really understands it. But I think I've thought my way through it to take that position. Thank you.
I think it's important, Councillor Churchill, if I may, that we need to recognise that council has a position on the DAPs, as evidenced by a previous agenda item today, and we are just relaying that to LGAP for inclusion in the whole of sector report that they are going to do. Councillor Young.
Madam Mayor, this is one of these motions that I don't understand what they mean. And as a consequence, I'll have to vote against it because I only like voting for things I understand.
Point taken, Councillor. Councillor Gregson.
The recommendation is two. It's very confusing, and like Councillor Young, I can't really vote for this because I don't particularly understand it comprehensively. So it doesn't make a lot of sense in that truncated form. So I'll be voting against.
Mr. Bonner, are you able to clarify this? It is C and D that are the options in paper. They're our preferred positions anyway, aren't they?
Through you, Mayor. Yes, in the report to council previously about the DAP, there's a lot of changes that were made that we are supportive of should the DAP be adopted. We don't have a particular concern about the value Homes Tasmania social housing. We do have some, there are some concerns about conflict of interest. As per the other motions, we are restricted, as you well know, by how the motion has been written. So, while we might have a more preferred way of writing it, we're trying to reflect what our best position is in relation to the motion that's been put. Notwithstanding that we do have other concerns around the DAP itself.
Thank you.
Point of order, Madam Mayor. The motion doesn't say what Mr. Bonner very skillfully said. If it did say it, I'd probably support it, but it doesn't say it, and you can only read what the paper says, not what we wish it might say.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards.
I was just going to ask Mr. Bonner over here. The threshold, either 2 million, 5 million, 2 million, 10 million, 5 million, is that a higher and a lower number, or what does that actually mean?
Through you, Mayor, the different thresholds determine whether it's within a city environment or a regional environment. So the higher is in the city and the regional is the lower. So say for the 10 million is a city development and 5 million for a lower area, regional area, which is all, it's the come out of the DAP paper.
Which we've commented on in the previous agenda item, and our position has been made.
Because it's not half the price to develop something in the country. It's quite often dearer. It's quite often dearer to develop something in the country than in the city. You've got to lug everything here.
All right. So if there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion that council advises LGAP that their preferred positions in relation to options C and D. All those in favour? Councillor Churchill, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Queenie, Councillor Edwards. Those against? Councillor Young, Councillor Walker and Councillor Gregson. Thank you, the motion is carried, thank you.
Did Mr. Councillor Edwards vote?
He did.
Yes, he did. Agenda item 8.5 is the review of private works policy. There is a recommendation on page 66. Councillor Walker, thank
Thank
you.
you, Mayor. I move that council adopts the private works policy as attached to the report item effective 25th of March 2020. 2025, sorry. Those last couple of
I don't think I
items
can
are
stay awake,
the
Madam
board meetings.
Deputy Mayor seconded, thank you. Is any discussion or comment in relation to the private works policy, councillor McQueenie?
Yeah, I guess it reflects my experience around public sector organisations, but it surprises me that council employees and councillors are able to put in requests, and in instances under 25,000, that those requests can be approved by at manager level, not general manager level. Or that we would consider doing major works, given that there are councils who have got into trouble about private works being done by the council and reporting and otherwise of those. So my inclination at the moment, subject to the rest of the discussion, is I don't think that this is strong enough in terms of the safeguards around councillors and others using council services for private works.
Councillor Young?
Madam Mayor, through you, if I could ask the acting general manager, if we don't pass this private works policy, do we have any policy at all on private work?
Through you, Madam Mayor, this is essentially the policy we have on private works with very little modification, required.
So we do have a policy, do we?
Yes,
Similar to this.
Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Walker?
Thank you. How many, through you to actually, the general manager, sorry. How many requests per year would council get for private works?
Madam Mayor, we don't receive many. I think a couple of years ago, we probably had about $20,000 for the year for private works. We carry out private work currently for State Growth as a contract for spraying the Tasman Highway, and there is a significant amount of other activity that has been put through private works associated with the Black Summer bushfire program, which has placed council in the position of funding works that are private in nature through a grant. So they're not capital works for council, and so we've used that account. So if you looked at that account in the last couple of years, you'd see significant activity going through there for that reason. But our annual tally for that would probably be more $20,000 for the general public.
You have Councillor Gregson?
This basically is a good policy, probably not as strong as I would like, but it states commercial rates, so you don't have the mates rates issue. With private works, how does that, I'll just place this to the acting general manager. Does the council compete with private contractors? And if so, in what basis would that be occur, if at all, please?
General Manager?
Through you, Madam Mayor, you'll see noted at 1.3 that we reference the Trade Practices Act 1974, the Local Government Act 1993, which require effectively that we do not compete where there is adequate alternative private companies. So we don't, private works are not our core business. We don't particularly encourage private works. There are some requests we get that we refuse, and from time to time we'll refer people to other contractors who they may not be aware of, who they may seek prices from. The State Growth contract, again, is one that they've had difficulty getting contractors to carry out, and so we've priced that for them on a couple of occasions.
Thank you.
Councillor Wood?
I think it's a fantastic thing. If we can get money from the state government to spray weeds, let's keep doing it.
Put a note on the bill.
Any,
Exactly.
any other comments? The comment, I'll put the motion, all those in favour? Those against? Councillor McQueenie is against, the motion is carried, thank you. Agenda item 8.6 is the Dendy Small Grant application for East Coast Regional Development Organisation, otherwise known as ERDO. There is a recommendation on page 69. Councillor Edwards?
I recommend the council approve the application for community small grant funding of $840 to East Coast Regional Development Organisation.
Thank you, seconder. Councillor Churchill, thank you. Councillor Edwards, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Not at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Churchill, do you wish to speak to the motion?
I just think this amount of money for what they're trying to do, they're trying to improve a space that they can't currently use. And it's a space that should be, and reports indicate that that's going to be a much used space. So I think it's a great thing for council to support.
Councillor Young?
Madam Mayor, I support ERDO's operation. It costs them $40 a day just to pay the out of pockets to keep that Tribala village going, and it's used mainly for community benefit. And ERDO struggled to raise the money to keep it operating, and every little bit of help they ask for, I think we should give.
Thank you. Councillor Gregson, then Councillor McQueenie.
Thank you. I'd just like to concur with councillors Churchill and Young. I'd like to particularly congratulate the ERDO for listing the estimated costs for events and activities to be covered by the Community Small Grants funding, which is $840.27, when the maximum could be $1,000 or $1,500. So they've really thought about this, and it's really improving a space which is vital, really, for not only Tribala but the region. So I'd like to congratulate them and wish them all the best with this application.
Councillor McQueenie.
Yes, I also would like to commend them on the application. They do an extraordinary amount of community work at that site, often led by volunteers, and often with groups that otherwise may not actively engage in the community. So, and the fact that this will make it proper for purpose for a range of different activities when we know that it's already well used is great.
Any further comment? Councillor Edwards, do you wish to close the vote?
I think it's all been said.
Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Agenda item 8.7 is again a request for event support. The Bishano Surf Life Saving Club Devil of a Swim event. There is a recommendation on page 74. Councillor Young, thank you.
Madam Mayor, I move that council approve the application for event support from Bishano Surf Life Saving Club for $2,000 and in kind support subject to available resources.
Seconder. Councillor McQueenie, thank you. Do you wish to speak to the motion, Councillor Young?
Madam Mayor, there have been people on this east coast who've drowned, and I'm all in favour of everything to ensure that people, locals and tourists, can swim. Now, I do add a little note of caution. The alert a couple of days ago, there was a white pointer shark saying 800 metres off down the beach, Spring Beach, and I hope it doesn't get up to Bishano, but otherwise I support it.
Thank you. Any other comments in relation to it?
Yeah, just, with regard, it's $2,000 is the applied amount or application. What's the in-kind support? How much will that cost, please?
General Manager?
Madam Mayor, I am unsure.
Gregson, can the General Manager take it on notice and perhaps advise you out of session? Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments? Put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, councillors. Agenda item 9 is notice of motion. There are none. Councillor Churchill.
May I speak to that, please? There was a notice of motion to go into that part. And I had an email from the General Manager to the effect that it was going to be there. Could I have an explanation as to why it is not there, please? And yeah, thank you. That's it.
Sorry.
Madam Mayor, point of order before you go ahead. I notice that there is someone in the chamber as a member of the public.
It's Mr. West,
Oh, of course,
consultant.
yes. I didn't recognise.
Councillor Churchill, I'm sorry, Councillor Young interjected there, and I didn't get the last bit of your comment.
No, it's okay. It's item 2.3 from the confidential agenda. It was a request to have it in the open section of council meeting. I would like to know the reason it's not there, given that I have an email from the General Manager stating that it would be there.
So, there was significant advice received around the matter. Because the matter contains sensitive information, that if it was released into an open agenda, it's likely to cause some reputational damage to council and the acting General Manager for including personnel information in an open meeting agenda. There is a very low risk of breaching the Personal Information Protection Act if the matter remains in the closed session, but there does remain a risk of a breach of that act if the sensitive information in the agenda was actually released into an open agenda.
The legal information around that has not been published in our agenda.
No, it's not published in the agenda, but you have received it.
We have received it after the agenda went out. That's correct. And another round of the same sort of stuff again today. What's the reason for that?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to know whether or not legal advice was obtained by the General Manager or you relating to the inclusion or otherwise of this item in the agenda.
It wasn't obtained by me, it was obtained by the General Manager.
The acting General Manager obtained that legal advice prior to the publishing of the.
And to include or not include?
To consider the advice and make a determination.
So acting General Manager, it's your interpretation, not the legal advisor's interpretation. Is that the correct way of putting it?
That would be a correct way of putting it, yes.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, I move that the meeting be adjourned for 10 minutes so we all can consider our position.
Can I ask one question, please?
So Councillor Young's already moved a motion for adjournment. I need a seconder.
No, sorry.
So your reason for the adjournment, councillor, sorry, just
So we can consider our position relating to this issue.
Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Motion is lost. Councillor McLean.
I'm right now to ask one question, is that right? Yes. I'm just wondering if the advice was received before what Councillor Churchill was describing was received and considered before the email that you are quoting.
Councillor Queen, I have to just check. Confirm.
So councillor Churchill, did you have something further?
Oh, I have a lot further, Mayor, but I'm not getting my questions answered. So the email that I have was early on Thursday morning to say that that was the case. The agenda came out that afternoon. I was not advised that anything had been changed, so proper processing was not followed. The legal advice was not put into the agenda, even though it was received at least by 7:30 on Thursday morning. That legal advice still did not go into the agenda.
As I understand it, legal advice is generally not included in an agenda.
I think you are wrong on that point.
Yeah. I'm stand to be corrected, councillor. I don't have a problem with that, but it's always been my understanding that legal advice is to the council, and that it is not included in an agenda.
As I understand it, it should be included in the agenda. The general manager is entitled to make his statement, which he has done, but the legal advice should have been included in that agenda.
Through there, may I call for an adjournment so the acting general manager can consider Councillor McQueen's request?
Yes. We just did that.
No, but he couldn't give a reply.
Has the adjournment not just been voted down?
It has, but in the light of further questions from councillor Churchill that of a perhaps sensitive nature, it probably needs to be further information sought, councillor Edwards. So that's why I would be inclined to adjourn the meeting.
So do we just so we take a vote, do we?
I'm sorry, no. I can adjourn the meeting for a proper purpose. I'm just trying to find the section of the meeting regulations that allows that to happen. 13. So in accordance with regulation 13, I am adjourning the meeting for 20 minutes to seek further advice on the matter raised by councillor Churchill.
Can we just clarify the matter?
Pardon?
Could we clarify the matter that we're seeking advice on again? Is it councillor McQueen's question?
I know councillor Churchill's question, his
About
original question.
Legal advice in the agenda, is that what we're clarifying?
I believe so.
Yep.
Yeah. Mrs. Kerr, if you could please ensure the recording is stopped.